There's one number that tells you more about your financial future than your salary, your job title, or your credit score combined. Most people have never calculated it. Some have and immediately close the tab. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what that number should be at your age in 2026, and more importantly, why the statistic almost everyone uses to measure themselves is completely rigged against them. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You were on your phone or your laptop and you searched something like, "What should my net worth be at my age?" A page loaded. You saw a number, and you either closed the tab immediately or you spent the next 10 minutes convincing yourself the number was wrong, the source was outdated, or that your situation is different. Here's what's actually different about your situation. You clicked. Most people don't even get that far. Most people carry this vague sense that something is off with their finances, but never actually confront the specific number. And I get it, because that number feels like a verdict. Like it's going to tell you something permanent and damning about the choices you've made. But it's not a verdict. It's a starting coordinate. And without a starting coordinate, you can't build a route to anywhere. So let's build the route. My name is Yahya, and I've spent more time than I'd like to admit breaking down the gap between people who quietly accumulate wealth and people who earn the same income but never seem to get ahead. If that kind of breakdown is useful to you, subscribe. And give this a thumbs up if it ends up shifting how you think about your own numbers. Before we get into the 2026 benchmarks, let's make sure we're measuring the same thing. Net worth is not your income. It's not your salary, your hourly rate, or your bonus. Those tell you how fast money arrives. Net worth tells you how much of it stayed. The formula is one line: everything you own minus everything you owe. Add up your checking and savings accounts, any retirement accounts, the current market value of your car, any property equity you hold. That's your assets. Now subtract everything you owe: your mortgage balance if you have one, car loans, student loans, credit card balances, personal loans. That's your liabilities. Assets minus liabilities, that single number is your net worth. Open your phone calculator right now. Rough numbers only, don't overthink it. Add what you own, subtract what you owe. Write the number down somewhere. You're going to need it in Chapter 7. It can be positive, it can be zero. For a significant portion of households right now, it's negative, meaning they technically owe more than they own. That's not a moral failing, it's just a position, and positions change. Here's why this number matters more than income. Two people. Same employer, same salary, same city. One has a net worth of $280,000 at 38, the other has $11,000. Neither of them is lying about their paycheck. The difference is entirely in what happened to the money after it arrived. Net worth is the scoreboard. Everything else is just how fast you're running. Here are the actual benchmarks. I'm going to give you two numbers for each age group, and I need you to pay attention to both, because the difference between them is the most important thing in this video. Under 35, mean net worth, approximately $183,000. Median net worth, approximately $39,000. Ages 35 to 44. Mean, approximately $549,000. Median, approximately $135,000. Ages 45 to 54. Mean, approximately $975,000. Median, approximately $247,000. Ages 55 to 64. Mean, approximately $1.57 million. Median, approximately $364,000. Ages 65 to 74. Mean, approximately $1.79 million. Median, approximately $410,000. Look at those two columns again. In the 35 to 44 bracket, the mean says $549,000. The median says $135,000. That is not a rounding difference. That is a 4-to-1 gap. And if you've ever felt financially behind after reading a statistic online, I'd bet everything it was the mean you were comparing yourself to. Let me explain exactly why the mean is the wrong number. The mean is a simple average. You add every household's net worth in an age group and divide by the number of households. Clean math. But mathematically clean doesn't mean useful. Here's the problem. When you average in people worth $40 million, $150 million, $800 million, and there are more of them than most people realize, those numbers pull the average so far above the middle that the result stops describing any real household. Picture a room with 10 people in it. 9 of them have a net worth of $70,000. One person in the corner is worth $11 million. The average net worth in that room is now over $1 million. Does that describe any of the 9 people sitting there? Not even close. That's the national net worth average. A small number of extreme outliers at the top distort the figure so dramatically that comparing yourself to it is genuinely meaningless.
Here's a real scenario. A 41-year-old with $55,000 in a 401k, $18,000 in savings, a car worth $14,000, and $22,000 left on a student loan has a net worth of $65,000. That feels uncomfortable, but that person sits above the median for their age group. The mean told them they were failing. The median tells the truth. The median is the person standing exactly in the center of the line. Half the country has more, half has less. That's the only benchmark worth using. So if you looked up your number and felt defeated, go back and check which statistic you were comparing yourself to, because there's a real chance you've been losing a competition that was never fair to begin with.
Now let's talk about the mechanism. Why do 2 people with identical incomes end up in completely different positions? The first killer is income expansion. Every time earnings go up, raise, promotion, side income, lifestyle adjusts upward within weeks. Nicer car, bigger apartment, more subscriptions, more eating out. The income grew by $800 a month, and somehow $750 of it vanished into a slightly more expensive version of the same life. The gap between income and spending never widened. Nothing accumulated. Think about the last raise you got. What specifically changed about your monthly spending in the 3 months after it hit your account? Most people can name at least 2 or 3 things without trying.
The second killer is the wrong asset first. The largest monthly financial commitment most people under 40 carry is a car payment, not a retirement contribution, not an index fund. A car, which is worth less every single morning than it was the night before. The fastest depreciating asset in the average person's life gets the biggest monthly check. The math on that compounds quietly in the wrong direction for years. The third killer is the mental separation of retirement money. Retirement accounts feel theoretical, future money, not real money. So they get funded last, after the bills, the subscriptions, the spontaneous weekend plans. The $350 a month that could be compounding at market returns for 30 years instead gets absorbed into daily life and leaves no trace. Not because of recklessness, because the mental categories most people use for money don't match how wealth actually accumulates. Let me give you something concrete for each decade. In your 20s, the goal is the habit, not the number. Getting to $10,000 in invested liquid assets, not your car, not your furniture, actual investable money, proves to yourself that intentional saving is possible. The compounding that starts on that $10,000 at 24 versus 34 isn't a small difference. Over 40 years at average market returns, it's a gap that other contributions struggle to close. In your 30s, the goal is keeping pace. A healthy target is somewhere between 1 and 1.5 times your annual gross income in net worth by the time you exit your 30s. Not because that's a magic formula, because it means your net worth has been growing at roughly the same rate as your income, rather than trailing behind it while your lifestyle quietly absorbed the difference. In your 40s, the gap becomes visible. This is the decade where compounding stops being theoretical and starts showing up as real numbers. The target shifts to roughly 3 times your annual salary in net worth. People who started early hit this benchmark without dramatic sacrifice. People who started late find themselves needing to make much larger contributions for much smaller results. Here's what most financial planning articles won't say directly. The person who invested $250 a month starting at 23 and never dramatically increased it will often retire in a better position than someone who invested $900 a month starting at 36. Not because the math works out evenly, it doesn't, but because the early habit shaped every other financial decision that followed it. The number was never the point, the habit was. Here is your personal audit. Do this now or immediately after this video. Point 1. Calculate your actual net worth. Not a rough guess. Assets minus liabilities with real numbers. Write it down. The act of writing it down is half the point. Point 2. Compare to the median only. Find your age bracket from the numbers in Chapter 3. Compare your figure to the median column. Ignore the mean entirely. It has nothing useful to tell you. Point 3. Calculate your savings rate. What percentage of your monthly take-home pay is actively building your net worth? Below 10% means the gap will widen over time regardless of income growth. Above 15% means you're structurally ahead of the average person at your income level.
Point 4. Name your largest depreciating commitment. Usually a car payment. Calculate the 10-year compounded value of that monthly payment, redirect it into an index fund. You don't have to act on it today, but knowing that number permanently changes how you evaluate the next vehicle decision. Point 5. Set one specific next milestone. Not a vague goal, a number. $15,000 in savings, $30,000 in retirement, 0 credit card balance. One specific reachable milestone with a 12-month window. Write it somewhere you will see it regularly. Take that rough net worth number you calculated in Chapter 2. Right now, find your age bracket and compare it to the median. If you're above it, that's real. Let that land. If you're below it, you now have a specific starting coordinate and a specific next step. That's more than most people have.
Here's the thing about net worth benchmarks. They are not a measure of your worth as a person. They're not a measure of how hard you've worked or how good your decisions have been up to this point. They're a coordinate on a map, and the only reason a coordinate is useful is because it tells you where to go next. The research on this is consistent. The people who end up in the top financial quartile by the time they stop working are not the ones who earn the most during their careers. They're the ones who got an accurate read on their position at some point early enough to adjust their behavior, and then protected the habit of saving before the habit of spending got to it first. You just got an accurate read on their position.
The rest of this isn't complicated. It doesn't require a 6-figure income or an inheritance or a lucky investment. It requires protecting one gap between what arrives and what leaves, and putting that gap somewhere that compounds. That's the whole system. That's all it has ever been. If this gave you a clearer picture of where you actually stand, give it a thumbs up. It helps this video reach someone who genuinely needs to hear it.